Let's talk about oddballs. No, not oddly shaped testicles. I mean games that are structured quite differently from the mainstream series. These are the games that take their series into a different direction. Unlike spin-off games such as Luigi's Mansion or Soul Calibur Legends, a game is considered an oddball because it's in the same realm as the mainstream series while focusing on the same main characters, but changes up the gameplay to an almost uncomfortable degree. These sort of changes can be good, or they can blow up fabulously in the developers' faces. Case in point, the 3D Sonic games. After the Adventure series, Sonic Team has been changing up the gameplay of just about every Sonic game since. And I think we all know how that turned out. Sometimes a game should really stick to a good or promising formula like the Adventure series, but in other cases it's good to make some changes, even if it's a series of small changes in an effort to become a unique entity. And a game that shoots for such uniqueness is called The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Adventures. This game isn't only odd, but it has a somewhat interesting history. 4 Swords Adventures was released in 2004 as a sequel to The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords, and by extension, the Minish Cap. The former of the two was only available with the GBA version of A Link to the Past as an expansion game on the same cartridge. Unfortunately, you couldn't play this game alone. You needed a friend and a GBA link cable to so much as start playing. You could play this game with up to 4 players to get the most out of it, but that would probably involve holding up 3 innocent people hostage until the game was finished. The big selling point was the fact that you had 4 different color links completing unique and creative puzzles. So that means that there's 4 times the amount of links to have fun with. And if you're a Rule 34 kind of person, that probably, well, means that you have, 4 times the amount of porn to jack off to. 4 Swords Adventures follows through with many of the same concepts, but on the Nintendo GameCube. With some exceptions, but we'll get to that later. Because it's The Legend of Zelda, it basically follows with very similar story tropes, so there's not much to say about it. But let's take a look anyway. Zelda summons Link to Hyrule Castle to protect her as well as a bunch of Shrine Maidens as they investigate a disturbance in the Four Swords Sanctuary. Can you see where this is leading to already? The maidens open up the portal and a shadowy figure that looks just like Link emerges. Who is this creature? Well, Shadow Link, of course.
You dumbass!
Shadow Link captures the maidens and Zelda figures, then leaps into the portal with the real Link in hot pursuit. Oh, did I mention that Link didn't take his sword with him so he can fight his doppelganger? So either the Wikipedia page was feeding me some bullshit, or Link seriously thought he was gonna defend 7 women from evil without a fucking sword. Schmert!
The reason that bad things happen to you is because you're a dumbass.
Anyway, because this version of Link is an absolute moron, he is forced to draw out the Force Sword from its pedestal, splitting him into 4 copies of himself and releasing the seal on the Wind Mage body from both the previous game as well as the Minish Cap. So now the Links need to get their asses in gear and stop the world from going into further chaos, with the various Shadow Links harassing them along the way. As the game progresses, we learn that Vaati was only a pawn set up by Ganondorf, the main antagonist of the series. Ganondorf had stolen a powerful trident and used it to become Ganon, then stole the Dark Mirror in order to create a limitless supply of Shadow Links. Just imagine if all those Shadow Links weren't evil and aggressive, it would be a pottery shop's worst fucking nightmare. So naturally, the Links saved the maidens from various locations, stabbed Vaati in the eye, and then gave Ganon the classic dead man's volley to mess up his master plans. Yet there's one thing about this Ganon that always seems to bother me. Okay, sure, Ganon can never be fully killed, but sealing him away just seems too convoluted, as he can just easily break the seal and cause havoc anew. Then again, I'm basing this off the notion that Ganon reincarnating would take a lot longer than just shattering a seal, but what the hell do I know? The game itself follows a top-down 2D take on the Zelda series, much like the classics. So what is it about this game that sets it apart from the others? Well, the quick answer is the use of formations to solve puzzles and deal the pain on enemies. If there's something that this game does quite well, it's that it adapts puzzles with the fact that you have multiple links at your disposal. Need to have your links stand on switches? You got it. Need colored blocks pushed? Easy. Need to lift huge boulders? No problem. Need your links to pull a lever that use their combined strength that looks kinda like a weird sex party or the next Human Centipede movie? Then don't worry, you sick fuck, because 4 Swords Adventures has you covered. Link can cycle through 4 different formations that actually do pretty well in fighting off enemies in an effort to power the 4 swords they wield. Instead of dropping rupees like in the other games, enemies drop Force Gems. Get enough of them and your sword glows with the power to repel evil. All that really means is that your swords now fire a beam, look really shiny, and it's just mostly a means to break the barrier at the end of each level. If you don't have enough Force Gems, then you have the option to go back to the start of the level and complete the remainder of the gems, where you are then teleported back to the end to complete the level. Hey, at least you don't have to restart the level with nothing. Speaking of which, that is probably one of the only times where you start the beginning of a stage with something. The game is broken down into a region with 3 stages, each region ending with a big boss battle to save a maiden. Problem is that you start each level with nothing. No force gems, no extra hearts, none of the found items, nothing. To be fair though, that might have made things a bit too easy. Yet there is one thing that you do keep throughout the entirety of the game, and those are force fairies. This is basically your live system. You run out of hearts, then force fairies will revive you. And since you can collect force fairies like a crack addict shaking down his dealer, you would have to be a spectacular idiot to actually get a game over. Yet like any oddball to a series, there has to be some drawbacks with the design choices. So what's the problem with Four Swords Adventures that makes it such an oddball? Well, the most glaring thing is that this game is the most unoriginal game of the whole series. I've heard people consider this game to be like a hodgepodge of other Zelda games, but if you had to critique it like I do, then it's more like ripping off the rest of the series. Aside from the story themes being used, enemies are recycled, items are recycled, and even the locations are recycled. The most painful thought is that this game loves to repurpose elements from A Link to the Past. If A Link Between Worlds has some credit, at least its excuse for ripping off its predecessor was that it's a legit sequel. Here, it's like the developers threw everything into a blender and used the result in this game. Some of you may say that being able to control 4 links is new to this game, but it's not, since the concept originated in Four Swords, with Four Swords Adventures only polishing it. It's not just the rehashing that can be troublesome, it's also some of the structural choices that can be problematic. There are some sections that take place in a side-scrolling environment, in which you can't use your formations to attack enemies. Or how about those sections with caves and houses where a separate window pops up to show you what's inside? Or how about having both of those fucking things at once? And now we get to the biggest middle finger that this game has to offer: multiplayer on story mode. Like the original Four Swords, you could play with up to 4 players. Only problem is that even with just 2 players, every person playing needs a Game Boy Advance and a GameCube adapter in order to play the goddamn game. See, the window that pops up on single player is now sent to the Game Boy Advance, which is not only a stupid idea and concept, but it also distracts your concentration from the main screen if you need it. Not to mention that if you're recording this game with more than 1 player, then you are missing a huge chunk of the game while recording, since capture devices cannot detect the connected Game Boy. Thankfully I recorded this in single player, so it didn't really matter to me, and it totally distracted me from the fact that I lack any friends to even play multiplayer. Giving this game a recommendation or not really depends on how you want to look at it. Let me first point out that despite the fact that Four Swords Adventures rehashes several tropes from previous games, it's still pretty fun. One thing that Nintendo tends to do with rehashed features is to repurpose them in a fresh way, and Four Swords Adventures does just that. And yes, despite that the concept of formations is the most original thing that this game has to offer, the game does work around the premise in a manner similar to how A Link Between Worlds worked around being able to merge into a painting. If you want something absolutely new from this game, you will not likely find it here. Yet if you want to have a different experience, Four Swords Adventures does have a few tricks up its sleeve. Just remember to play this game on single player if you want to get the most out of it. Kind of a tough call, but I would recommend this game to anyone that likes the Zelda series. Maybe you'll like this game more than you'd expect, who knows? Anyway, this has been Rignella, wishing you to have fun, and to give this game a look at sometime. Take care guys.